Before we get started, I would really love for you to get into your worksheet that's in your purple folder. And there's a breakdown of a SWOT analysis. Many of you have probably done one. You've seen it as part of our budget process. But I would like you to spend the next couple minutes on your own writing down what you believe, and trust me, if you have your PowerPoint presentation, you already have a cheat sheet, which is what staff's SWOT analysis was. But I'm interested to make sure that staff understands what you think our strengths are, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats with regard to beautification of Louisville. That way we can kind of make sure we're on the same page with you guys. So if you don't mind taking a little bit of time to do that, and Mayor, when you're ready to go and get us started on the presentation, we'll get started.
Council, do we need a little more time? All right, hearing no objections to that, we'll go ahead and keep moving forward. Claire?
Okay, great. So I'm going to flip over to what staff had identified as strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And sometimes what is a weakness and a threat, an opportunity and a strength, those things can sometimes mesh together and overlap. So there's no right or wrong answer here. We just wanted to have that conversation. So I'd be interested, Council, if you would just express to us what you believe are our greatest strengths. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind going around the horn, and we can kind of get some input on the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Since Ronnie was telling me it's really early for her, we can go ahead and not start with her. Patrick or anybody to my right, you guys want to kind of kick that off?
I'll jump in, and I'm always fascinated by this kind of process to see how people think. These are very specific items. Mine tend to be much more broad and overarching. So we're looking, and we just want to do strengths at first. That we want to do.
Yes.
Okay. So the commitment to staff, I think, to the projects around beautification is a big one. I think that's a great strength that we have, and part and parcel with that, council support for the overall projects. And we're united in that support. So we all have different things that we believe in strongly, but when it comes to things like beautification and the betterment, how the city presents, I think we present a pretty united front in that and support of staff. And I think we also have great resident involvement. So we have all kinds of boards and commissions. I was on the art board for a while. Definitely a big part of the beautification of making Louisville present that we wanted to present. So I think resident involvement is strong, and I'll leave it at that.
Who'd like to be next?
Okay. Certainly in the strength category is all our plans, our standards, and obviously with the people we have here, the talented people we have doing their jobs to put this thing together. I mean, that's crucial. Harmful, also largely built out. Obviously,
Let's just stay with strengths.
Okay, strengths, plans, standards, and talented people.
Okay.
Okay. I think we have the determination to do it, and we have the willingness to work together to accomplish our tasks.
Anybody else want to chime in?
I think that we have the team and the makeup of our team, this family here at the city of Louisville, it works so good together. And in the energy that comes along with it and the passion, it's not a job.
Bob took some of the things I had, but just a different take on it. I think we have the will to get it done, the capability, and we have the ability for the team to focus to get the job done.
Mayor, I don't have anything that hasn't already been said.
I think our volunteerism, it could be greater, but the volunteer core that we have is pretty amazing, and I think that's critical. The other thing, I think we're very clear on where we are as a first-ring suburb. We don't have as many of the controls or rules that some of our younger communities have been able to create, and so we're, I think, very clear in where we are and what it takes to overcome that.
Okay. If you guys wouldn't mind opining on the weaknesses.
Weaknesses next. We're going to go through all four of them, Ronnie.
Yes.
Kristen, you mind starting?
Sure, I'll start. So I just have two. We didn't have a whole lot of time, so mine are more broad as well. But first thing I wrote was, we're limited by the time that we have, staff's time, to get everything organized and to look at new things and programs and all the things. And we're also limited by the amount of money that we have available.
So yeah, I agree with Christian. I have funding on there, but also a weakness is the relationship with TxDOT and their assistance for cities, especially on state roads.
They got my top two already, so we're going to keep it short and keep moving.
Okay.
To go back to, we are clear about where we are. Those are definitely our weaknesses. Some code, 40 years, 60 years of history of what was prioritized and not, and we have to be able to overcome that or figure ways to incentivize as opposed to using a hammer.
I was going to just basically some of the same things. We're largely built out, and certainly the TxDOT relationship with the trash and the lights is a big deal to me.
Might have been taking the lack of personnel and time for accomplishing things, and the aging of the entire city. So.
I'll just reiterate budgetary constraints in code as well. And I know we've talked about, for example, we have a old movie theater that is certainly not beautiful. I don't realize it meets code, but it's boarded up right now. And it's just those sorts of things keep us from being the city that we'd like to present as.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to opportunities. Brandon, you mind if we start with you?
Sure, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to come up with this one, but I think a lot of our opportunities are involved in leveraging our relationships with our residents, businesses, and nonprofits to actually help us with the beautification. Also to help us by using the app to report problem areas so that we can get on them a little faster. And I think, the opportunity to create a fully immersive program that includes all of those groups would help us improve.
I just went blank. Go ahead. The mall area, that's huge, and the partnership in this new owner wanting to work with us on that. And it's actually the community's willingness to buy in on the vision that we have out there. I think, albeit it's the 80-20 thing, that you get 20% that actually get out there, but that 20% of volunteerism and partnership that we have out there, they're like times 2 with their energy and passion level. So that's a great opportunity for us.
I think we have opportunities with LASD and with our businesses and maybe UNT, some of those bigger partnerships to create, whether that's improved green space, other opportunities where we can maybe change how we do things and create, as new spaces are built or renovated, create different aesthetics or different focuses for those folks.
I was just going to reiterate what we had, pretty much what we had yesterday, 121 Mall and Lake Park.
I think the citizens' involvement is what I see as a very good opportunity. We have a lot of people who are willing to participate and work at it.
So more of the same, I think. So, and this is not odd because I listed helpful as resident involvement, but it's also an opportunity. It seems like we have the same 100 or so residents that are involved in everything, and they're very excited about it, which is fantastic. I love that level of involvement. And I know we have probably scores of newsletters and websites and things that go out. So it's there for looking, but how do we get people to actually engage? And then that's the opportunity that we have. And then external organizations as well. So just read it. And we hit upon that a little bit with the athletic fields, yesterday's conversation.
Kristen?
I mean, beyond what has already been said, I wrote something that was more specific, and which was the Park Alliance.
And then we'll go ahead and do threats. William, would you mind?
Actually, I took one of your weaknesses and turned it into a threat. I'm not a big fan of HOA, so I wouldn't say that's a weakness in my opinion.
For threats, I had funding as one threat, just finding the funding, and citizens, naysayers are, I think, a threat. We have social media trolls that can be a threat.
So similar, I think, getting drawn off sides, it's really easy to want to chase everything, be reactionary. So, stay focused and try not to get drawn off sides. And I'm probably as guilty as anybody about being reactionary there. I think we have a threat in the continual erosion of local control in Austin, and we need to be vigilant about that. And then overall, there's optics involved. So, why can't we do this, but we can do that? There's a lot of misunderstanding about what budgets can be used for what sorts of things. So that goes back, I guess, to community involvement as well. But that's a threat that we have, just the overall optics, how we allocate funds.
Wonderful. Oh, I'm
Kristen?
sorry, I forgot about
we
Kristen.
still got the other half.
I said text dot corridors. We have little control. privately owned property that's grandfathered in, unengaged public, and then the state legislation.
Like Kristen, I think everything has kind of been touched on. I would just comment on the misinformed trolls. They're not much of an issue. I heard a mayor say, social media is not the real world, and people got up in arms and they'd like to post that back, but it's not. If you want to say something on Facebook, that's great. But if you want to fix something, come to the city, come to the staff, come to an elected official, and we can work to fix it instead of complaining about stuff.
In today's property tax environment, we have these different entities that are, it's not a competing, but it's citizen fatigue at the ballot box when it comes to some of this funding and stuff, and all the entities are trying to grab at their piece of the pie. And citizens they're fatigued. They're tired of it.
I think another threat is we know what we're trying to do. We have our internal language, but making sure that it's understood by residents and what we make that translation clear. So it can be a threat. People love to pick like 2 words out of something and say, "Oh, that's why we can't do it," or "That's why they're awful." And instead, how do we counter that with good messaging and get people focused on outcomes, not just sitting in an armchair quarterbacking.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Actually, I think it's, Patrick, when you said it was, you guys were, your ideas were more high level, I think that's appropriate because council is focused on the policy and we should be focused drilling down more on the operation. So I think really looking at the list we have up here, and I won't read them off obviously, but to look at this is us drilling down on, I'm happy to know that we're very similarly aligned. And the reason why that's really helpful is because we always start with the end in mind and figure, okay, let's identify what the problem is and where we should put resources. I'm giving this presentation rather than one of the other directors because we worked as an entire team together to come up with a plan of action, which was what the direction from council was to me was we want to see some movement in this, some growth, and we want it not to just be one task. We want to have an overarching strategy. So that's what I'm going to present with you today. The categories of our initiatives that we're going to cover are going to be engagement, enforcement, maintenance, placemaking, and advocacy and partnership. First up, from engagement, and many of these will have budgetary attachments to it. I won't have them specified here. I just wanted to make sure this is something you want to go forward with, and then we will bring up that in as a budget package to you guys next year. Some of them we are actually, in this first one, we're rolling out immediately, and we were able to do so mid-year. So from engagement, we have regular volunteer opportunities in the city with other nonprofits, but there is not, from a cleanup perspective, one that's run from the city that is ongoing that every single citizen knows on the first Saturday of every month or whatever that ends up being, that they can just show up and volunteer. I think there's a hunger in our community to be more connected, but I don't think that we, because of staffing levels, have in the past been able to provide that. So the other thing is making sure that is streamlined for volunteers. So if you are a church, you will know that this is the time to show up. You don't have to plan anything. You just know you contact the city. This is the day. This is where you're going to show up, and this is how many volunteers I'm going to bring to the table. Obviously, we have to work on the background checks and stuff like that, but it's a lot less hard when you're just cleaning up stuff than if you're working with kids in Thrive or something like that. So we need to make sure that process is streamlined. And we'll work with schools, churches, and businesses for that. The opportunity there is that we have our sustainability position has transitioned to an urban forester position. When our sustainability manager took another position in another community, we revamped that. The urban forester position, you've heard your parks director talk about the importance of that from the tree canopy and our healthy infrastructure plan initiatives, but this is an opportunity also to have that position handle this workload. Now, and we'll talk a little bit more about our partnership with Keep Louisville Beautiful. The urban forester will be the primary responsible party, but Keep Louisville Beautiful, we can't leave them out of the mix either, and we'll talk about that partnership. By having those regular volunteer opportunities, that allows us to unlock another opportunity, which is municipal court referrals. So right now, municipal court, if you have an indigent defendant who can't pay for their tickets, they can work that off through community volunteerism. But because the court doesn't have something that is regularly scheduled, there's nothing that they can do, and they don't have a volunteer coordinator for cleanups in our community. They're not able to refer them right now. So by us just starting this urban forester position and having those regular volunteer opportunities, municipal court can then refer. Yes, sir.
How do we make sure that well, I get that it is repayment for speeding or whatever that issue is. My concern on that type of work, though, is that it's seen as punishment, and I want to make sure that we're having that conversation with folks that we're grateful that they're doing this work. Like as a kid, my punishment was to go mow the lawn. It's like, so I hate mowing the lawn, right? So that's like, I don't want to, I have zero interest in maintaining my lawn because I hate that. That's punishment. So what I'm hopeful that this is seen and positioned as, it's not punishment. It's an opportunity. And oh, by the way, you're going to get something bonus out of it as well. So I don't know if I've got an answer, but it's just it's a concern that something that is beneficial to the community could be perceived as a punishment by the individual.
Yes, sir. We'll look at that. The other thing to note is that the court would not be saying this is the only thing that you could volunteer for. So they would still have volunteer opportunities with other nonprofits. So the person will still get to choose where they want to spend their time. So you're likely not going to, if someone would rather be stocking CCA's pantry, that's their choice as well, right? So this is just an additional opportunity for that.
And maybe some of it's just as simple as framing. It's like, these are your opportunities for restitution. Pick one that you think you would enjoy. Maybe it's just that simple. But
I use the word restitution.
Well, whatever something like that. Whatever we have to do. I mean, I know there's like bare minimum language that's required, but is there a way that we can maybe frame it a little bit better, that we'd like to give you the opportunity to pick something where you feel like you're giving back?
Yep.
I'm going to add on, that's a great idea. I really like that. I think this might be an opportunity to go through and with whoever is running that program, that's a chance for them to sell. Say, thank you so much. Your work is really appreciated. We'd love it if you came out here more because we need more people like you to join. So I think there's a sell opportunity to soften it's not a punishment, but it's an opportunity to serve. So
the other thing to note is it's not just indigent clients, it's also teen court deferrals. So you can also get your teens more engaged in your community as well. But I got your notes. Thank you. Also, council had approved us authorizing volunteer time off. So every year, the city manager gets to determine where the focus of that volunteer time can be spent for our employees. And because of the need for beautification, and I know that's been something that's been council's been interested in this year, and I would foresee next year as well, would be focused on cleanup. So it's partnering with Keep Louisville Beautiful, with Adopt a Spots, and directors will be starting to plan those team building exercises.
I like this. Keep Louisville. I love the citywide cleanup day. I just think it needs to be at 2 different times of the year. I would love to see an additional one somehow take off.
So I think there are two, but I think one is more publicized than the other one, maybe. But we're going to go through the providing better publicity on it as well.
Claire, I have a quick question about
Yes.
this. When I see VTO programs, I see them manifest in one of a couple of ways. One is this appears to be more department directed, but I also see self-directed a lot as well. So as long as it's within the umbrella of this, you're going to focus on beautification, and you have a cause that's dear to your heart, you can also use that time for that. Is this what are the thoughts around those two types of VTO?
Yeah, so you, as an employee, you can choose yourself where you want to go. This is just an opportunity. We've already started the VTO program. You're not seeing it take off as fast as you would think, and I think it's because our employees need pre-planned things to plug into, right? And I think they also want to do things from a team building perspective. But no, absolutely. An individual, if they are really passionate, can go out and use their VTO just on their own time, with their own passionate. Yes, within Louisville. The VTO has to be spent on work in Louisville to benefit Louisville. Any other questions on that before I go forward? Good discussion. Okay, next for engagement is stormwater credit education, and I think this is something that Councilwoman Green has been harping on, that's a negative word, has been touting as important. There you go. So for stormwater credits, we have various ways that businesses can get stormwater credit, but this one is really focused, especially from an education standpoint, on code officers, and also for economic development from a business retention standpoint, mainly because we don't have very many businesses that are currently using their stormwater credits. I think a lot of them don't know it's available. And although I would love to receive all of their stormwater fees to be able to use for long-range projects, at the same time, they're leaving money on the table. And if one, for example, is parking lot sweeping, so you can get credit if you have your parking lot on a regular sweeping schedule. I think if you were to look at the list of weaknesses that staff had identified as some of the commercial properties need some upkeep, better upkeep on their property. So if code officers are going to start going out there, and then we'll talk about that from an enforcement standpoint, and start focusing on the commercial enforcement, well, there's also a way to at the same time educate those businesses and say, but yeah, you may have to put some more money into maintenance, but here's a way you can recoup some of that from a credit. We want to also explore, and I don't have the answer to this right away, but gamifying cleanups throughout the community to add healthy competition between neighborhoods, schools, or individuals to compete against one another who can pick up the most litter. So Jim Proce has been in another community where literally there were competitions on amount of weight of trash that neighborhoods had picked up, the city had picked up, those types of things. So we want to explore that some more. And then code volunteers. Originally, this was actually listed as code rangers, but Jackie Davis hates that name. And so I promised him I would change that name, but I still called it out. He doesn't like that name, code rangers, because there were cities in the past that would have members of the public that would get in city-issued vehicles and would have the authority to issue notices of violations. And within the first week of this one particular city came back and they had 300 notices of violations, and 75% of them were not correct. They were not actually violations. And so it created havoc within the community. And so that's not what we're saying with code volunteers. What we are saying is this is, for those who were on council at the time, we had a group called Neighbors Leading Neighbors early on. This is somewhat like that. If you were actually in those meetings with the neighbors leading neighbors, it was really members of the community who wanted to beautify their neighborhood a lot. That was their primary interest. And they were very engaged with our code enforcement officers, but this was before we had the city app. So this is an opportunity to get volunteers in our community to really just use their phone and be an advocate in the community. What we have created, our app, is exceptional, and it allows us to quickly keep track of these code violations. You heard from Chris Lee about how we're trying to use AI to better make it more efficient. But it's a central place for us to be able to capture all that data and then also to be able to run reports off of it. So we want to push our community towards that. And I think it was Councilman Meredith who was, one of you, I can't remember, was saying that was something you wanted people, no, it was Councilman Jones who said, bring them more towards the app. I think you said that.
Yes, I try once a month. I try to remember to bring up our Louisville, Texas app that everyone should download, and I use it fairly regularly. The one piece to this, I love the idea. I would say we need to couple that with, like you talked about the other, I guess, municipality that had problems with people miscoding things. You may want to also use videos either on the city YouTube. On the cable television, Spectrum still doesn't work, so that people can see, okay, like here's what we're getting, here's what you should be reporting, to kind of help guide people along to make sure they're doing it the right way. So we're not getting increased information that's not good.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I had written there, I just didn't touch on it, was the training aspect of it, because it's important. Those volunteers are trained by our code officers on what to look for. Anything else on this one?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, before we move forward, I like the idea of engaging the community to help with cleanup. What I think we could also do is, or how do we establish a love for our city with the general public and focus on litter prevention? Because there's always going to be litter. We're going to need to do cleanups, but the idea is if I care about my neighborhood and my city, I'm not going to be throwing trash out the window or throwing my trash on the ground when I'm going for a walk. I'm going to pick up after my dog. What can we do to help establish that sentiment within the community?
It's interesting. It's an interesting discussion, because one of the things we had with engagement early on was, well, maybe we need to do a giant public campaign. Communication campaign where we're trying to come up with a logo, and we're trying to come up with a catch line, and when we looked at it, talking with James especially, you're seeing that there's not a great effectiveness for those types of programs. And so you could end up spending, we could hire a consulting company to do that. It's just not, I don't think that the payoff will be what we want in those regards. So to me, and I'm interested in what the rest of council thinks on this too, but to me, I think it's the more people are engaged in our community and they love our community, they'll take care of it. I also think there's a hard part of when you have what you're trying to achieve right there, I think, is like cutting it off at the source, right? Like everything here seems to be reactionary. It's like, how do you stop people from doing those things? And I think it's also hard when you look at when you go back and you look at some of the threats and weaknesses, but threats, the number of state roads, so people that don't live in our community are littering in our community. And we have very little control over that maintenance, right? That automatically has the community feeling like, well, why do I need to act differently because I'm seeing that? You also have issues, the fact that we have 3 landfills in Louisville. And so on Business 121, coming from Castle Hills into Louisville, there's trash. And that's 100% coming off. It's actually, the interesting thing is what I think is happening is it's not coming, sometimes they're required to have loads that are like buttoned down so they can't have trash come off. Sometimes it escapes, and usually you see them with it covered. Maybe it'll be a little bit too full and you'll see some trash coming out. I think a lot of it's when they're leaving the landfill and they don't have it covered anymore, but they have stuff stuck to the bottom, it's floating out then. So that's one of the things we're going to look at too is, well, is there some way we can regulate that? And is, how do we address the source? But I don't have a good answer for you other than engagement. I'm interested in council has any other ideas on that.
I appreciate the conversation.
Here's one thing I think we might, can we go back to the stormwater?
Yes.
I think there's an opportunity here. We're talking about business with stormwater, but I see my neighbors all the time blowing their grass in the street. It drives me nuts, but I don't know that they understand what that means. I think there's an opportunity here that you could maybe sort of tie these all three together and do a campaign out there. Say, hey, if you're blowing your leaves and your trash in the street, I need to understand what the ramifications of that are. You know, my wife and I do, but I don't know that everybody else knows that.
To go along with him, there's a lot of landscape companies too. I'm not sure if it's our contractor or but on Purnell, coming from Railroad Street Thursday, they're all up and down Purnell, close to the curb and stuff, mowing all that area, blowing it into Purnell. And with not a thought in the world, but I see that everywhere I go.
I see it. I've seen it in my job as a Lyft driver. I had a family in the car a couple weeks ago. The one kid was playing with the rear window, so I did the kid lock on the window, so they couldn't roll the window down. Well, the mother said, "Hey, could you roll my window down?" And then she said, "I need to throw this pizza out." And I said, "No, I'm not going to let you throw that pizza out the window." It's one of those things where people, people are just insensitive to the problem. And I've seen it. It's happened to me several other times when I had people in the car.
I had a thought, since we're talking apps and spending money on marketing campaigns that don't necessarily move the needle. Do the apps provide us with a GPS location? And if so, can that inform where we place trash cans, or where we place, here's a bag for pooper scoopers, or just thought that we could be maybe let's just assume this is going to be a hot spot for garbage for the rest of the world. It's going to be a hot spot. I mean, especially when you're talking dense locations down here in urban Old Town. There's going to be particular preferred locations for the pets. I'm pretty sure Kristen can name a couple of hot spots for that. And so, is there a way to just say, you know what, this is where that's going to happen. We're just going to put a bag station here. So, just a thought.
I would agree with that. The former place I worked at, this school, they shut down for a couple of years while the neighborhood took it over. It was their little dog park. The school district just gave up. They just put the trash, containers out there with the dog stuff, and okay, well, it's a dog park now. We're just going to accept it.
I will say that might help, but my observation is that I have seen a whole lot of people not pick up their mess with the doggy bag station 10 feet away. But it does help.
And then we can use the cameras to publicly shame. No, sorry. Never mind. Moving on.
We'll put flock cameras out for dog pooper scoopers.
DNA testing?
We'd probably
Citywide
call them
DNA
flop
testing.
cameras at that point.
Okay. So from an enforcement standpoint, it's making sure also that employees have full ownership of their community appearance. I think there are some teams that community appearance is important to, but I also think that there are some teams that is not in there. Like, for example, finance department's not, they're not coming to work going, my core responsibilities are cleanup of our community, right? So, but at the same time, every single employee, I think it's setting the expectations and accountability that we're all in this together, and to make sure that we are reporting things. So to that end, if you see something, say something. We have created it is only internal right now because we have the app for the public, but we've created a cleanup hotline for our internal staff. And we are going to give you guys the phone number because you are part of our team. So council members can also use that. It is in your folder. But basically, it's a phone number, so you can always use the app, but sometimes I find it difficult when I'm commuting, or if I'm getting into my vehicle and I'm about to start going somewhere. I don't want you to drive and text or drive and call or anything, comply with all laws. But I have found this to be an easier tool for me. So I'm probably the highest user of this phone number, but I just call and I'm like, hey, at the corner of Valley Ridge and Summit, there's some high weeds, or there is a bunch of junk that needs to be cleaned up, and that's all you need to do. And you just leave a voice. It's a recording. It will turn into a digital message that then gets, right now, and this is why we're doing it internally, it goes straight to one person, which is this woman right behind me. And then she is basically the operator that sends it to the correct department. Now, you heard Chris Lee talk about how we're trying to use AI to figure out a way. Right now, we're just testing that to see if there's a way to make Melissa's job easier. But right now, that's what's happening. And then we're sending it to the right department. Then that department enters it into our app so that we actually have still a correct logging of that information, and we can keep that as a data point. But I wanted to make this available to you guys too. So we are having team members starting to use this. I've made this available to all of the city employees this last week at Coffee with Claire, but I'm going to be sending this out to them right after retreat as well.
So quick question about that. I understand the intent of not having people text and drive, but people will try to text this number because texting is just such a common thing to do these days. Is there a text option for this number at work as well? Fantastic, thank you.
It's funny that you said that, see it, say it, because I'd written down here, see it, sack it. Because so many people, they're walking around, they want to get on social media or they want to call about the trash that's right there when they're walking right by it. So if you see it, sack it. I mean, it's real easy to put a little effort into your community to pick up just a little bit.
Also wanted to talk about Louisville's enforcement philosophy, because I want to make sure council is on board with if we turn up the heat a little bit from a code enforcement standpoint. So our general philosophy with code enforcement is, and this is not just, when I say code enforcement, I don't mean the code enforcement team that just reports to Jackie Davis. What I'm talking about is all code enforcement. When I first came to the city and I met with fire prevention and they're doing enforcement, building inspection, pretty much it's a philosophy that's been from the root of history in Louisville, which I don't think is a bad philosophy, but we want to just achieve compliance. So we're willing to work with you and give you a lot of leeway so that as long as you're making efforts towards something, we want to work with you. And we're trying to avoid ticketing if possible. So I'm not suggesting that we go straight to ticketing. Obviously, there's statutory requirements that we have to give certain amount of notices. But if we are going to start dialing it up a little bit with regard to, and we'll go through the next slide, which will talk about the timeframes for notifications and things. I want to make sure council's comfortable with that. Our focus also over the next year, and we'll go through the timeframes on tickets, but focus over the next year is going to be commercial property maintenance. This is where we're seeing that we have growth opportunities. Substandard structures, litter abatement, cleanup of construction sites, and replacement of dead landscaping. And then the other thing that's interesting is that commercial buildings most of them, except the ones that are exceedingly old, have engineering site plans and landscaping plans, which ties in what landscaping material they have and they have to maintain on their property. So as things die, they're not in compliance unless they keep maintaining that. So the difficulty, and I've seen this right down the street from my house at an apartment complex, is that we made them comply and they put in the same plants that they had in their engineering site plan, but those are not, with weather changes, those are not, they lasted 2 years. And so it's looking at if we need to have a code change that gives staff the authorization to, hey, if you're, maybe you don't plant back the same non-water-wise plants, but gives them the option to replace it with something that is more water-wise, so that you don't have them continuously dying year after year. Any questions on any of those things?
Just a quick comment. I'm all for enforcement. Moving a little away from the cleanup, parking is one of the things that drives me crazy, especially in Old Town. But I think the one add-in that we could have is, like, especially for commercial properties, is utilizing with the message. We're kind of reaching out to like the senior homes, but the apartments we can reach out to as well. I know we talked with them about like recycling and things like that. Add in a component to educate them, and maybe we can tie in our native planning so they can actually put in native plants. I'm all for giving staff leeway to get things done. There's no need for us to be involved in every decision that's made, but giving them options that will last, so they won't have to keep going back. And for any businesses, make sure we tie in like the chamber, so we can educate and let them know that we're going down this path of more enforcement, so that we can and why we're doing it, because invariably they're going to be people in there, we're trying to get fines. No, we want to get people to do the right thing and follow the rules. We just have to educate them and push them along, but we have to have the carrot and the stick. Mm-hmm. So I just think that's just to add on the education piece as we become more enforcement heavy.
Great, thank you.
I would say, too, that we need to a little more focus on the construction sites and the cleanup. I'm used to a more, like, every day maybe they got a street sweeper kind of thing. I'm seeing that they're not doing that. They're just kind of leaving it out there. So I think a little bit more on that would help.
Jim and his team are already on that. In the last couple weeks, that has been, we're going to set a new standard for our construction sites.
I mean, even asphalt, making sure if they're cutting the street that the asphalt's level with the top of the street.
If you have a specific place you're talking about, will you talk to Jim afterwards? Okay.
I'm going to jump on the compliance. Yes, absolutely. People know what's right, but they know what's wrong. You get caught doing something, pay the price. I have no problems with enhanced enforcement. There might be an opportunity to tie some of this back into the volunteering to work that ticket off if you like. But I have no problem stepping up enforcement here.
Just so you guys can see that, since you gave me a good segue, Councilman Kelly. So this is our code enforcement process right now. Obviously, different types of violations require different amount of notification, and the timeframes we give people depend on how big the issues are and how fast you can. Like a high grass and weeds, well, we would expect you to mow that within 7 days, versus if you have a Texas Transportation Code says inoperable vehicles, you require a 30-day notice. So you've got those statutory requirements. But right now we have a first notice. We have been doing a door tag, and then that's 7 days, and we come back with a second notice. That's when we send regular and certified mail, and then finally, third is when you have a citation issued. Anywhere in that process, if the property owner calls us and says, hey, I'm working on it, can you give me a little bit more time? We've been very willing to say, okay. Unless there's some other extenuating circumstances, like the neighbors are really up in arms and there's a lot of complaints about something. I will say from a statutory standpoint, we'll just say high grass and weeds, for example, they are only required to give one notice before citation, and we're doing 2 notices. So just note that. The other thing to know is that one of the things we will be moving for is for repeat violators, we are not going to give this same level of notification. I mean, we'll comply with law, but we're going to be more streamlined with regard to pushing them towards citations and doing max fines on those as well, or at least asking that the court do max fines.
Before you jump slides.
Yes.
I just have a couple of questions on this one, and some comments. One, would there be a way? It's been a while since I've looked at the violation warning. It absolutely looks and sounds like I'm getting a fine. It is very aggressive. I don't think it gives enough. Hey, we will work with you if there's an extenuating circumstance. You need to reach out to us ASAP if there is one. I would love to see that language. I don't know if I want to say softened, but make sure that we up the visibility of we will work with you. And it may have changed and it may be fine that way, but what I tend to see in my inbox is I can't believe they're suing me for, or they're going to give me a ticket. It's like, no, you got a yellow violation, and yeah, I know it's upsetting that you've got picked on, or so you feel, but I've seen different ones where the language was softer. It wasn't just like in your face about get it done or we're going to hammer you. I think to at least just say, hey, if there's an extenuating circumstance and you can't get this done in 7 days, call this number ASAP. I think that would be something I'd like to see. So I need to break down this data here for just a second. I've got 24,677 inspections. Are those cases, or are those visits, or what are they?
I'm going to have Jackie Davis come up and answer those questions.
Those are visits.
Come on up and get on the microphone, Jackie.
Well, yeah.
Those are, just working, there we go. Those are actually on-site inspections of,
Okay.
could be some complaints, and then we have to go out and verify them, those type of things.
So what I'm trying to get at, Jackie, and I'm hoping you can help educate my ignorance here. Code officer either is notified or comes by and they see something that needs to be flagged.
Correct.
So they flag that. How many visits until that's resolved on average?
I'd say 2.
2. How long on average?
7 to 10 days on average.
On average?
When you get into going towards the citation stage, it's a little longer.
Okay.
Are you
depending on
talking,
the type.
what type of, are you talking about just for high grass and weeds?
Standard violations, unsightly matter.
Unsightly matter.
Yeah, health and safety code issues.
So what I'm getting at here is your guys' time is valuable. Getting this resolved is valuable to the community. Can we use these metrics to see where the curve is and how much are we spending? And is there, as we go into more enforcement, is it moving the needle on the amount of time it takes? I mean, if it takes, if I've got a 40% group that's just 3, 4, 17, there's got to be a point where we go, without just major extenuating circumstances, this is a one and done. This is a two and done. I love you guys, and I don't want to put you in that position where you don't have carrots, but I think we do have enough carrots. I mean, we've worked really hard to give you guys carrots to move those ones that need it into a different process, I feel like. But that's what I hope that we get out of all of this is, okay, what is a softer approach to code enforcement versus a hard approach to code enforcement? We can put a number to that. As far as time it takes to resolution and number of visits.
Yeah, I think, and that's one of the things we've been asking and talking with Code on is how many touches do you have on each, right? Because that every time they have a touch, that's work, right? And
right.
Are those touches actually paying off, or are those touches just extra work for them? And now, I mean, I will say when you see 97% compliance rate, that means the touches are working because we're not going to compliance.
Sure, but a 97% compliance rate, yes, but how long does it take to get that? I can get a 97% compliance. I can probably get 100% compliance as long as my time horizon is long enough.
Right. The other interesting thing is that they always have the ability when they get to court to work it, as long as they've gotten compliance by the time they're, when they have their pre-trial, we typically are still working with them, right? So now we're in court, and now as long as they've fixed the problem, they've gotten rid of the unsightly material or whatever it is, we're many times willing to just, drop the charges or work a deal with them, right? So in those scenarios, if they're one-offs, it's, first time situation, I think we're willing to continue to work with them on that. But if it's an ongoing problem, we just...
Yeah, our frequent flyers, and I think we know what they are, where they are. Absolutely. Hopefully they're, I'm not saying treated differently, but I think treated understanding the history that has been there to put a little bit more pressure on that.
But I think you're hitting on it. I think in the next year, we're going to be trying to figure out using that data of what is our return on investment on number of touches we have, and is there a way to streamline? I would love to have them have more capacity. And so is this really meaningful? Are we just extending it out too long? Should we just write a citation, get to court, and then, let the chips fall where they lay?
We also have abatement procedures that we are capable of using, which we just go in and we clean it up.
Yeah, and then put a lien on it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That answer your question?
Okay. Sort of my question, but also my perception of how we can use the data that we get to make the department better.
Yes.
And I know some of this is probably, some of your tools have not been where they needed to be. I mean, on the technology side of things.
No,
we've
I
really
think
been working through that.
I've confirmed they're good with what they've got right now. I thought I had a misunderstanding about what their solutions were, but I was schooled last week.
Good deal. Jackie, thank you.
And also, the other thing to note is beyond just code enforcement, I mean, if you look at construction sites, that's not code, that's building inspection. So, every time they do an inspection, we're now telling people, as of, I think, 2 weeks ago, if your site is dirty, you're not getting approval to move on to the next permit. So we're basically saying this is part of your permitting process, you have to keep a clean site. So next is, this is more budgetary impacts. So this is maintenance. So a strike team is one of the things we're proposing. And so we can afford this if we are willing to do a additional fee on our trash collection bill of up to 68 cents per utility customer per month. And that would pay for a 2 to 3 person strike team. And what that strike team would do is that we already have contracts for maintenance of our right-of-way. But it's when you have let's say you have a homeless encampment that has moved on and there's just a bunch of trash sitting in one location. This team can be called out to deal with that. You could also have a situation where, let's say on Business 121, down close to Castle Hills, we maintain the medians over there. Well, we may have a street sweeper that comes through. Well, all of the dirt still may be up on top of that median. This team can go out, blow off the medians into the street so that it's sucked up by the street cleaner. Same in Old Town. Like if you have cleaning of streets, but you have, you may get dirt pushed into little corners and it doesn't really look clean, this team can be able to coordinate with those contractors to do so. This team would also be keeping track weight-wise of all of the trash that they pick up in the community. And that can also be used towards KLB's, especially if we're continuing our partnership with KLB goals for trash pickups, which could enable us to get additional grant funding. I'll pause on that because that's a big shift. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Council thoughts?
Love it.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I like the idea. I think it may be also, if we can, make sure that we get as many pictures as we can so we can tell the story of what's going on. So when people ask, what are we spending this money on, we can give them something that they can see and understand this is what we're fixing.
Agree.
Yeah, I do. I support it. I do have, if I have any concern at all, it seems like we do hear from time to time, not infrequently, that it's just going to be another buck here, another buck there. So those do tend to add up. I like the concept a lot. I'm not overly concerned about it, but I just want to be cognizant of it's another $1 a month and how that adds up to the overall bill for the end of the year.
Yeah. And I think there is some more discussion about that recently, especially I think from the Castle Hills standpoint, because you have your trash bills that are put onto your utility bill as well as part of that overall, and so I know we just recently increased that cost. So then pavement markings and crosswalks. So a budget expansion is going to be needed, and we'll work that in to your upcoming budget to make sure we're doing more of those markings and refreshing them.
Refreshing. I have a question about that because it seems like, isn't there some sort of additional clear coating or something we can put over that? Because so many, like the peel out marks that are, so many of them are just, they don't look good now.
I think of the green paint for the bike lanes. That stuff seemed to just disappear overnight.
Yeah, I think there's different types of, there are different types of treatments that we can use. It depends on the cost. So I know there's you call it thermoplastics.
Thermoplastics is
that you can use,
yeah.
And that's additional costs associated with it. It really, with a lot of the painting, if you're with this heat and this weather, you have to be on it to keep it maintained, to have it be crisp. So, but thermoplastics also can be utilized. Balance that.
Yeah, I would love to see more of this. This actually came up just yesterday. And Jim, I owe you an email about this actually. But it's a safety issue as well, right? These things should pop. They give a finished look to an environment when they look good. Then it can make it something run down as they start to erode. So I'm all for doing what we need to do to make sure these. It seems like a small thing, but whatever we need to do to keep these things crisp, I support that.
And I will say, for expectations, it is something you'll always be chasing. But I think we can do better than what we're doing right now. And also, just for the people who are listening, a lot of the roads that have complaints as well, I mean, we have growth opportunities, obviously, are TxDOT roads. And so there are times that I have made myself personally complaints about TxDOT striping over top of, I think it was 3040, and it took, 3 months to get anyone to even respond to that. So, and we'll talk through what's going on with TxDOT in a little bit.
And I don't know if we can show that in the app. If if somebody puts a report out, or any of our medias like that, maybe it's a Google form or something on their website. Is the road you're complaining about a state road? If it's a state road, we will be happy to send that to TxDOT. And people need to, but is this a 121 main 1171? I don't know if there's a way to do that, but I'd be okay with flagging TxDOT on any of that stuff and reminding residents that's a TxDOT road. We're going to help you, but that's not the city. It's a TxDOT road.
And that's also something we're dealing with lights as well. When people are complaining about lights, and some of them are ours, some of them are coasters, some of them are TNMP. So I think the public thinks it's all the cities, and so we're largely, other than using our advocacy skills to get them to fix them faster, we're dependent on those other entities.
And the more data I have on that, the more, as the legislative session starts to kick up, I can go speak to our legislators and say, look, these are the unfunded mandates that we're having to deal with. These are the complaints, and this is the baggage that it's putting on my staff because TxDOT's not maintaining their facilities to a standard that really is required.
Okay, I'm jumping in here. In the app or the call-in or whatever, with all the code writing and the AI and all this other stuff, why isn't there some link the minute you put in the address that it can tell exactly where that needs to go?
I'll have to talk to Chris if there's I think from what we've been doing, and I don't know, is Chris Lee in there in the audience? Yes. Hey, come on up here. I'll ask you the question.
I was just going to say that seems like the response on the app is pretty good. You get it's been received, so that may be something that we can collect the data and AI can respond in a way saying this is a state road. We'll report it for you, but you also and it can send them the number here. Here's how you would contact TxDOT. The city will add this to the list and contact them as well.
Or the link that goes straight to it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but we can't even get to it.
I think the response can be set up, but I'm all for the pavement marking because I've been getting a lot of that, and I think the key is to control what we can control, but also inform the people what we can't control and what the steps can be.
So, Chris, the question that was asked is, we have our app, and this is dealing with TxDOT roads or things that are not our property, like lights, et cetera. If someone is complaining about it, I think it just comes into us, and we act as the liaison to help. There's not a response that says, this is a TxDOT road right now, correct?
That is correct.
And so Councilwoman Cade was just asking, is there a way to make that almost automated to identify that, hey, because you can get your GPS, you get your GPS location right now when you're making the complaint that it says this is a TxDOT road, to at least let the person know. And then her next question was, can you just have it automated sent to TxDOT? I don't think you can at this point on that.
Yeah, and we're talking about through the current app, correct?
Yes.
Right. So there is a map that you select, to your point, to where it will depict the location of whatever asset that you're wanting to report on. Currently, those assets are not depicted with respect to whose responsibility they are. So that would hold true for roads, lights, anything of that nature. Could we? We could definitely change, or I would assume we could add some type of meta field to describe who the ownership is. Automating the request to the particular owner, that proves to be a lot more challenging. If we were to do something of that nature, I would assume we would actually do that development outside of the app altogether, meaning that there are certain constraints within the app itself, right? And so one of the cool things about having in-house development is we can do things that are outside of the box, right? But that does require us to truly own that, and it's additional technical debt on our side. I would not envision us being able to have that functionality within that current app, but if that's something that the council and city management desire, it is something that we could probably do in-house to provide that functionality.
I will say, though, that, thank you, Chris. So the other thing to note is, I think that had been a philosophy previously, when I first became city manager, was people were complaining a lot about streetlights being out. And so we were like, well, this is not City of Louisville, so just if you have a problem, contact TNMP, which happened to be where a lot of them were having problems with. But in the end, we're still getting the complaints. And in the end, the public still thinks it's us. So we're trying to advocate for these people. And also there's at some point wanting to, and I think council, I would imagine y'all are going to agree, is that from a safety perspective, we've heard from our public, we feel like we don't have enough lights in our community. What we're finding, and you'll see this on another slide, is that we have a lot of lights that are out. There a lot of lights that aren't our responsibility for maintaining, but we're paying a tariff on them anyway, so we might as well get them fixed, right? We might as well get them for our community. So our staff has now decided, okay, we got to take ownership of that, but it does put more staff time, energy is being spent on it, but we're trying to get the end result being beautification, right? And safety. And safety.
Well, and so to kind of piggyback on Ronnie's comment there, because I think where Ronnie's going, and if I'm misspeaking, let me know, but I think where you're headed with that is, we want to dogpile these agencies until they're tired of us and they just do the work they're supposed to be doing. For example, this tariff thing, right? They provide us lights. It's not my problem that they don't have somebody that does shift work at night. That's not my problem. You've got money that we pay you to maintain the lights. I shouldn't have to have somebody at night driving around. You know what you provided as a business service. So you pay somebody to do shift work. That's really simple. And I have 1,000 complaints. So if we can document that, I have 1,000 complaints. It's costing me this. So I'm more than happy to continue to do this, but you're going to reduce my tariff because I'm doing your job.
Exactly.
So that's where I'd like to be with lights, and because this tariff nonsense, I've been looking at this for years now. Why are we paying the tariffs we're paying for incandescent lights? I mean, you look around the city, we still have a ton of sulfur and incandescent, and that stuff's expensive compared to LED. And don't tell me that the LED and the replacement, it's not going to pay that back in spades. So sorry, that for me though. This is a business conversation with a TNMP, with a TxDOT, and with our legislators. But if I don't have the data, if I don't know what the burden has been on my staff, I can't have that argument. That's the hard part.
Yeah. So we are actually meeting with TNMP, I think, in the next week or two to talk about these very conversations this week. So we're on the same page with you. There's also lead time on ordering the replacements for a lot of the lights. TNMP is telling us, but the LED is not. So we just need to understand that cost differential from that business standpoint, and that's what that meeting's about, is making sure we understand that cost differential.
They know what the life expectancy of these things.
Exactly.
They know what the failure rate is. Don't tell me, oh, well, we got to wait and order all this stuff. You should have ordered it a while ago. I don't know why, but my button's coming on and off all day. Okay. So, but they know the life expectancy. This is not rocket science. This is light bulbs. This has been handled.
Yeah.
So for them to give me that, well, we don't know, we don't inventory, we have to whatever, BS.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have some experience with Encore doing the same thing with the city of Dallas, and it's like $500 a light to change out to LED if they really want to go to it. It's $500, and it's why they can't, and just why they just don't order the light. If they need to order a light, just keep some light poles on staff on hand. They know that they got to replace these light poles. Just have them in your yard.
I do want to call out a little bit of difference, make sure we're on the same page. There's the complaint that I hear, the concern that I hear is not enough light on street X or not on street Y. And that can be a couple things, right? There can be two root causes. Root cause one is what we're talking about right now. The lights are just out and they haven't been replaced. Root cause two is somebody just feels like there's not enough light. The distance between the posts are too far apart. And I've seen this movie and I know how it ends because we address this with the water districts quite a bit. It come up. And as soon as we go through and say, that's great, we'll go put more lights in, nobody wanted them in their front yards. So I do want to make sure that we don't get aggressive about putting in more lights and then get a backlash the other direction. So, well, I don't want them in my front yard. I don't want the light coming into my front living room.
It's like you know our mind, staff's mind. That is absolutely a concern that comes up.
I want to make sure that all of Louisville is treated equally in this, and we have some sort of...
We have a standard on lighting, spacing.
And, yeah.
We have a standard on lighting spacing. We do have in key corridors, you've seen council have made some changes to that to increase lighting on those key corridors, but yes.
But we have some areas that do not have lighting at all, so we need to make sure that those are...
Yeah, so you guys had given us some additional funding related to just filling in where there's lights that are missing. One of the projects we're currently working on, but we still have to go through TxDOT on that, is Business 121 corridor over close to the Triangle area. So that's one of our key focuses right now, is making sure there's more lights out there.
Yeah.
So other than that, similar to the pavement markings and crosswalks, it's the refresh of painting of traffic signals, and then goats. So we are going to be deploying goats, I think this month. Stacy, do you have a date? Next week, we're deploying goats.
I am so excited about the GOAT project. I know we talked about
Yes.
this.
I don't know anybody that's not. I just like opening a can of goats.
I can't even place why it's so exciting to me, but I think it's a couple things. One, I think it's green, which is always good. But two, I love the out-of-the-box thinking. It's like, hey, we got a problem. How can we solve this? And I love it. But I'm very, very excited about this project.
I'm sure we're going to get a lot of pictures.
I need to know if they count the amount of goats when they release them. So how do they know if they have the same amount coming back? Do they take inventory?
Yes, my understanding is that
They do?
there's a company that it's like a modern day shepherd that stays with them.
So they would miss one.
Yes.
Now,
You can't steal.
No, I wouldn't.
For everyone who knows, Ronnie wants one.
Can you pet the goats when they're out there?
I don't know. I don't know the answer
Can
to
you
that.
play fetch, throw
I
the
think
ball?
it depends on how nice you are to the shepherd.
Patrick, they're employees. You shouldn't be doing that.
Oh, that's a way to get fired. Right?
That's right. There are lines that we have to draw.
We've talked about this, Claire. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll do a social media post before they are deployed so that you guys can share with constituents. And then also budget expansion is needed for replacement of dead landscaping on median. So you have seen, especially with weather in key corridors. So I think to be smart about where we're going to be spending this money, key corridors are probably going to be the place you're going to want to focus it on. But we do, right now, when things die, we're not actively replacing them. And that a source for that might be our tree mitigation fund going forward. So then next up is placemaking. So we have a lot of opportunities on the near future for large-scale projects. We're working on them, and this is where we can plan for that beautification. So you've got your mall redevelopment, your lake district, the marina redevelopment, the lake park redevelopment, which is all of that's part of the lake district, but I wanted to call them out separately, and then Old Town, specifically where you guys gave us funding for a complete landscaping revamp in Old Town. And we're working on that. Also, it's funny, it's like council has read my mind yesterday. Some of you had made this comment about facade and relocation grants in key areas. And so these are basically the tools that we have been providing in Old Town, but finding other key areas for those. And I would say key corridors, the Business 121 corridor would come to mind, which I think is what you guys were saying previously. Continuing to pursue public art, obviously that is council doubled down with approving that as being part of the the bond election. So we will wait to see if we can get that funding through the bond election. And then tree planting grants. So for this, we know that there are key areas with the healthy infrastructure plan, as well as with targeted corridors like Business 121, where trees would really change the sense of not only air quality and having cooling effects, but also change just the look of it. And so this is not to replace by minimum code. This is not to have businesses meet minimum code requirements. This is to go above and beyond. And then, Mayor, you talked on some of this already, and some of the other council members did too, but this is advocacy and partnership. So with TxDOT, it is not that our TxDOT local offices don't want to help. The state is not fully funding TxDOT maintenance of roads. So we recently took over, 4 or 5 years ago, we took over I-35 maintenance on the feeder roads. And what happens is TxDOT gives us whatever they were paying earlier, they give us that dollar amount, and then we have to supplement. And I can tell you what they give us is not nearly enough to keep it clean. And we're supplementing, and it's still not keeping it clean, pristine, right? So this is an ongoing. It's just bad. And every city up and down TxDOT roads are experiencing the same thing. Right now, we're also looking at taking over Business 121. Now, that's a lift. And I hate to say that we're going to have to take over responsibility of a TxDOT road. But at the end of the day, it's not going to get done with the current funding. So from TxDOT. But talking about with TxDOT, it's really seeking additional responsiveness. I will say the strike team would be able to also be someone who's engaging. We would have a crew leader that could be more engaged with TxDOT. But then we really do need to advocate through the legislative process with our state legislatures to get TxDOT more dollars for maintenance of local roads. And I'm, totally fine maintaining it as long as they're giving us the appropriate amount of dollars for that. And so then we already talked about the electric providers. So we started taking over about a year ago. We decided, okay, we're seeing that there's some problems with lights. And we see that our electric providers are not going out and identifying when lights are out. So let's put our manpower, pay people overtime to go out at night and just identify those lights that are out. And right now we have currently 700 lights in our community. I mean, this is just total transparency that are out. Now, some of them are Louisville lights, some of them are CoServe, some of them are TxDOT, TNMP. The majority are TNMP. And then we're going to be working with all of those to get these fixed. But the difficulty is not that to get them fixed is a problem, but they will get fixed. The problem is the ongoing checking. It is a very manual process. There's not a lot of data other than going manual. And I say manually. We've created an app, but it requires a person to drive around town to identify it, and it's falling on staff to get it done. And that's where we're concerned, and we want to advocate more with those providers to help us.
So I have no idea if anybody's done this, but when I hear something like that, it seems like a drone might be something to explore, putting a drone out there that follows the same pattern, looking for lights that are out. And I think for the cost of an employee, you might be able to do a program like that. I have no idea if that's being done right now, but it's something that might be worth looking at. They can't fly at night? Well, there you go. That's why nobody's doing it, I guess.
I was like, that's a great idea, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why Walmart shuts it down.
Hey, Claire, one thing, when you're talking about TxDOT and you're talking about us taking over the roads and funding, I'm sure there, like TJ brought up dogpiling, I would just say accumulation of information, maybe a better way to put it. Maybe we can talk with other cities that are around us so that we can gather that information, what we're spending, what we're getting, and in collaboration get that up to our state officials, because it's going to be a legislative issue, so they can see the gap and push the issue for not just us, but all the cities.
I agree with that. I know that Judge Eads has at least expressed in the past some interest in trying to get a collaborative of other cities in Denton County to work together to get that data. So I think you're definitely aligned with some of the discussions that have been had.
I can bring that up at the next mayor's lunch.
Okay, and then last but not least is Keep Louisville Beautiful. So I think Keep Louisville Beautiful does an amazing job with their event. It's one of the largest volunteer events of the year, every year. And we do have city involvement in this, but this is really making sure that how can we put that on steroids from a communication standpoint, because it's already a great event, and how can we wrap ourselves around that to help them more? Can we do promotional videos leading up to it to get more people interested in it? And then making sure all employees are involved as well, not just some of the key departments. And then also making sure that council understands where we are aligned with KLB. So wanting to see if they will come to us and do just presentations with our Parks Board as well as with council, so that we understand kind of where their litter abatement efforts have been. They can report back on their gardening classes and beautification efforts and litter metrics, and let's set goals together. I think that is being done on a department level. Parks is usually the liaison with them, but I would love to see it on a board to council level as well. So with that, anything else for discussion?
I'm hearing consensus that we want to move forward on several of those pieces, so looking forward to seeing some more focused direction and next steps.
Okay, wonderful.
All right.